与您分享独处的幸福心理学，不是被迫的孤独与寂寞，而是主动回来做自己，在一个人时，在群众里也能享受独处的幸福。
I look forward to sharing with you the latest research about how pain is created, how we feel pain coming from our brain, it's the center of where pain is feelings are originated, and how we can work with that to improve our mental, emotional, physical, and social well-being.
相信大家都有这样的一个体验，那就是当你心情好的时候，你看到身边的人事物都是美好的。但是俗话说，人生不如意之事十之八九。所以，当我们遇到不如意的事情时，如何能够稳住心情，才是活出幸福人生的关键哦。那我们应该怎样做到呢？
本次的讲座透过情绪的起伏、梦境以及内外的冲突，带领大家一起寻找并遇见真实的自己。
And I would like to invite you to join me for a free webinar called Thriving During COVID-19, Cultivating Self-Compassion and Developing Resilience, on Sunday, February 23rd from 3 to 4:30 p.m. as part of the Resilience and Wellbeing Summit presented by the University of Tunku Abdul Rahman.
3月8号晚上8点，我将带领一场讲座，叫做“好心情，好幸福”，欢迎大家一起来参与，我们到时见哦。
I'm really looking forward to presenting at the summit. My topic is going to be all about finding balance and cultivating resilience. During this presentation, I'm going to introduce you to this idea that well-being is in fact a skill that can be learned.
Very good afternoon to everyone here. Can you hear me? Yeah, do alert me if you could not hear me well, yeah? Okay, welcome to all of you, friends in the webinar and also Facebook Live. Yeah, welcome to join the Resilience and Wellbeing Summit 2022. Our sessions today will start now. We are very happy to have all of you joining these 15 sessions in this summit. My name is Michelle Tai and I'm the moderator for this session. For the benefit of friends who just joined us for this session, allow me to introduce a little bit about our summit. Yeah, but I think some of you may have heard it many times, so bear with us for some repetition. In conjunction with the Utah University Tunku Abdul Rahman 20th anniversary of its founding in Malaysia, we are hosting this remarkable and impressive summit, which is titled the Resilience and Wellbeing Summit 2022. And together with two co-host partners, Journey Within and Body Counseling Center. Yeah, I'd like to deeply appreciate our dedicated partners, and I'm going to read their names, which includes Alliance Eliant, a non-profit organization led by our speaker for this session, Dr. Mikaela, Kaohsiung Medical University Positive Psychology Center, Taiwan Mindfulness Association, Taiwan Association for Caring and Counseling for Lost, Malaysia Xiao En Group Counseling and Support, Lifeline Association Malaysia, Malaysia Mindfulness Association, Tan Siang Mitra Welfare Association Penang, Inner Journey Academy, Roll Call Firms, and Sinchu Daily. Really appreciate. This summit has commenced on the 20th February and will continue until 31st March. For the next few weeks, we'll be covering topics, various topics, and this is we are already in week 3, so we're presenting talks under the theme Developing Awareness and Resilience Skill to Endure Hardship. There will be many more inspiring and informative sharing, so stay tuned with us and do share our exciting talks to all your friends and relatives. Although our seats for the webinar has sold out, but please feel free to share with your family and friends about our talks, also appearing on Facebook Live. I'm sure it will benefit them as well. We'll certainly be more motivated to run this type of events in the future if we have your support. So please like our Facebook page for further updates. You can find the links from our chat box. And just a little bit housekeeping reminder before we get started. As a gesture of respect for the speaker and organizer, please do not perform any recordings throughout the session. Our chat box will be closed throughout the session. So if you have any question during the presentation, we encourage you to type them into the Q&A box in your Zoom control panel. We really appreciate if you could communicate with us closely throughout the session in the comment section in the Facebook Live. What goes on in your mind or any questions or concern you may have, let us hear from you. And we are actually entering this very difficult time. So to begin with, I would like to take this opportunity to raise concern about a rather unprecedented challenges of our time. Yeah? So most of us are affected by the pandemic. And we also know many people are suffering from the Ukraine and Russia war right now. So I like to take this opportunity for us to come together to pray for the people suffering in the pandemic storm and also Ukraine war right now. And in our prayer, we pray that let violence be turned into love, oppression be turned to wisdom and freedom, and health and peace of mind could be experienced. experienced by all. May I invite all of you to take a brief 10 seconds in noble silence to honor this prayer. You can either maintain your eyes open or closed. Thank you so much for joining me in this prayer. Next, I'm very delighted and honored to be the moderator for this session. Just a little bit about my background. I am Michelle, and I'm the founder of Journey Within, a center for mindfulness and spine care since 2008. And my field of passion is in posture care and mental well-being, seen from the perspective of spinal care and body movement. I'm a registered yoga teacher trainer, a certified critical alignment therapy teacher, and a HRDF trainer. And 22 years after obtaining my first degree in law, in 1999, I'm actually recently back to school again to pursue my master's degree in sports science. And more importantly, aspects of me, I cannot miss, I must tell, and why I think the talk, today's talk is going to be so relevant is coming from my role as a mother for my 13-year-old child. Basically, I'm just like many of you here who are listening to this talk for the betterment of myself and also the next generations. Next, of course, I'm going to introduce the speaker for this session, Dr. Michaela Kocher. Dr. Michaela, MD, pediatrician, was the head of medical section at the Göttingen School of Spiritual Science in Dornach, Switzerland for 28 years. She is also a globally published author for several books. Dr. Michaela has also served as a school physician for several Waldorf schools in Germany. Today, Michaela is the chairwoman of the Alliance, which is internationally involved in various educational topics, and it advocates the freedom of choice through education. I was there when, I was there when Dr. Michaela first came to Malaysia in 2011 to give her 2 hours talk. And I was so inspired that my son ended up in Waldorf school since he was 3 years old. I'm not the only beneficiary to Dr. Michaela's knowledge and insights. So whenever I speak to some friends, it's not unusual for them, for me to hear how Dr. Michaela has aided some people, in fact, many people, with hope and comfort in their times of insecurity. And I trust that this afternoon's session is going to serve the same quest. I do not want to be the spoiler. Let's hear from one of the very inspiring speakers to present to us the wisdom in finding balance, nourish mental well-being, strengthening resilience amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Michaela to take over the floor to share with us how we can find a clear orientation for ourselves to make the best of this pandemic situations. Let us welcome Dr. Michaela by clicking the like button or in the Facebook Live, because we cannot clap, as our welcoming gesture. Dr. Michaela, welcome.
Good morning, Michelle. Good morning, dear participants. Thank you very much for inviting me to join your summit, because the theme is really necessary. It's one of the most burning questions today, how we can find an inner core, an inner standing, an inner security in times which bring so unexpected global changes, and most of us have no idea towards what direction it will go in the next 10 years. We live, so to say, in a real turning point, not only in outer circumstances, when we look to global health, climate change, poverty is increasing in spite of all what was said, what we will make due to technology. So many promises are broken, so many perspectives could not become real. But however, many people, much more than 10 years ago, are really awakening up that we need a change, and that this change, this global and country and personal change, cannot be expected only from the leaders in economic and political and religious life only. Of course, they play a very important role, but time is really ready. And I experience this more and more, and I'm happy about that. And I hope our session will also contribute to that, that more and more people realize the turning point of our actual time is in my own heart. And when many hearts are experiencing this inner call that time is ready for cooperation, for real feeling responsible, co-responsible for humanity's well-being, for our Earth's well-being, and put their own energy into this, the more are doing this, the better it will go. And therefore, as you have heard already, I engage myself since I'm retired in this NGO Iliant, and we really try to reach out to as much as possible people just with good ideas, with inspirations on all fields of life. Many of them are offered by anthroposophic research. Others are coming from beautiful other initiatives. You know, it doesn't matter where from we draw our engagement, our wisdom, who gives us the opportunity to wake up. The main thing is that we wake up and that we realize it is us who can bring within us the change about, and through this, also the change towards the better in our country and in the global community. And I would like to thank you that we started with a short reflection, even a moment of inner listening. Where are we? Not only in pandemic times, which is now my main theme, but also completely, for the most of the Europeans, unexpected war in Europe. Even people who know that there was, since the last 20 years, more and more trouble and doubts in the global players. I will not at all go in details between Russia, USA, Ukraine, and Europe. But of course, one could experience and hear and have little outbursts from tensions, from unbalanced opinions, confrontations, historical, economic, but no one did believe that an escalation, which comes out as a real war with bombing, destruction, making people imprisoned in a city without possibility to flee, minimizing nutrition, and all these horrible things the Europeans have experienced in 2 world wars, that this comes again, and that our mediation faculties, the tools of diplomatic high-level culture, could not become successful. This is the shock under which the Europeans, and many in the world, of course, as well, are right now, because we could do it in a different way. We have a culture since more than 200 years, which is based on the individual, rational, comprehensive, mindful thinking capacity and reflection capacity. We know about escalation, de-escalation, we know the tools, we have the philosophy, we have the inspiration of freedom and dignity, we have all this. And that in spite of all this, old emotions, lower instincts, power games are coming up. And that is what I mean. We cannot just think the global authorities will make it. No, we need more and more the co-responsibility from all of us. And therefore, please allow me that I start with a very famous prayer by St. Francis, but one even is not sure if it really comes from him. Many of you will know it, but I would like to start with this, and maybe we can even at the end close with this, if you think that's okay, because it describes this turning point within every human being, this moment of free decision. If someone is blaming me, why I give him the power to blame him back? Is there a need? Do I just follow my emotions? No, there is no need. I have the freedom not to blame him or her back. I have the freedom to understand, at least to try to understand, why this person confronted me today in that emotional or whatever way. Everything in the world has reasons, and I have the chance to learn about. And when I have understood, maybe I can forgive. So to experience this inner strength, this inner power, this inner force, this inner turning capacity in all of us, that has to do a lot with mental health and resilience. And I hope my contribution will enrich this idea. I will start now with this prayer of St. Francis, and then I will contribute 5 main aspects how to strengthen our resiliency in pandemic times primarily. And then I'm very happy that we have time for questions and answers. And I thank very much for the warm and welcoming moderation. St. Francis, O Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, Let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O Divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it's in giving that we receive, and it's in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it's in dying that we are born to eternal life. Francis was very committed to the Catholic Church. He was obedient, he was servant, but he always said, my connection with the Lord is coming out of my own. It is not mediated by the church. It is really amazing. He lived in the time, in the beginning of the 13th century and the end of the 11th century, in this medieval time, and he could speak total free out of his innerst existence, saying, the church is for me the outer carrier, I'm fully member, servant, but my connection with the Lord is rooted in my own authentic being, not mediated by any authority on earth. And that is, I must say, the key question of resiliency. Can I find within myself this inner force to stand on my own feet and to find and go my own path, self-guided, not depending on authorities, listening to authorities, proving it is this what I really want myself as well, and then making good decisions for me and others. But finally, follow my own conscience, my own mental capacities. How can we develop mental well-being if we don't use our mental capacities? If we are depending with what we think and feel on others, then others finally are ruling us. Then others are the strength in us. We are not living out of our own resources. And we all know the more we use our forces, the better they can develop. And what we leave aside, it will weaken. Now, what is the fundament of resiliency? The fundament of resiliency is, of course, that we live in an environment which is appropriate to our needs. Therefore, it is important to create an environment for children, for youngsters, for us, working place and at home, which is as much as possible supportive to our lives, that our senses can see harmonious issues, that there is a little picture at our working place, that we have nice reminders what is essential in life, that we surround us with objects, with attitudes, with rules, and so on, which can support what we need. Because we are, to a big extent, in a direct interaction with our environment via senses, via nutrition, via breathing. We are part of the environment. The environment is part of us. And to care for the environment is also to care for us. But of course, we have limits. We cannot change completely our environment. But in regard now, the pandemic and all the fears and all the problems we were in over the last 2 years, and in Malaysia particularly, I read your numbers, and you have 32 million inhabitants. Right now, about 80% are fully vaccinated, and you lost 33,000 by death. And every country has such numbers. But when you start to think about these numbers, and it's interesting when you compare this globally, then you see there is in the average plus minus, and colored, of course, by the environmental circumstances. You know, when people have a low immune system, a low immune capacity due to a lack of nutrition, due to poverty, due to living too close together because they are poor, then of course, in such regions, in Brazil, in Africa, in Asia, you have, also in Europe, you have much more people who suffered and died from the pandemic. But those who live in healthy circumstances, it is quite rare. And we learn from these numbers that independent how strict the rules, like lockdown or like movement control order, as you called it, you know, in Australia, in Malaysia, you had some of the most strict rules. Again, in China, complete lockdown of a whole city. But when you compare this worldwide, then you see in countries who had far less strict rules, you have almost the same outcome. So there is a certain dynamic in the pandemic itself, quite independent, how we try to regulate it. And even the vaccination in Europe, when I see our numbers now in this new wave, the Omicron wave, most of those people who are in intensive care units, in most of the hospitals, more than a half are completely vaccinated and boosted. So independent of that, and of course we know it, the vaccination, and this is an important help, of course, along our modern medical knowledge. But it was said from the producers of the vaccine from the very beginning, the vaccinations cannot stop the virus. They can only mild the process of the illness, that you will not die, that your infection will go smoothly, That was the promise of the vaccination. Therefore, vaccinated people can get the infection. They can pass it on. So that is the reality. And therefore, there is a dynamic in the whole pandemic which can be, to a certain extent, regulated. Of course, when you stop any contact, then you stop the infection to a certain extent. But in the moment in which you restart, it will come up again. So it is a huge topic, and we will not go into this because we have another theme, how to reflect these 2 years pandemic management worldwide, and how to learn from it. That is a big, big issue for the next years, and many people are busy with that right now. But what I want to say is that the first level of resiliency and protection is to care for the environment and for the real risks. If your immune capacity is well, then it is absolutely exceptional that you will die from COVID. But it is an option when you have preconditions or a lack of community. But even among those, it's only 10% risk, which is, of course, a lot, but 90% recover. Why do I say this? I say this because we need to make the fear realistic. The chance not to die, not to be one of the 33,000 among 32 million. The risk to die is very, very low. So this is the first thing when we care for the real risks, for the environmental situation, when we think, when we see, when we look, when we take serious the facts, when we do not only believe authorities and sayings and narratives, but when we really start to think ourselves and to compare and to reflect and to make a good judgment, then we see there is no need for fearfulness. We are in midst the so-called normal risks of life, by traffic, by other disorders, by other infections. When you take all the numbers from them and compare, you see it is not that big difference. And this, don't understand me wrong, I do not talk small, the pandemic. Best friends of mine came to death. I know many, many cases, many complications, problems. I'm a physician. It is not harmless, but the risk to die, nevertheless, is not that high than people fear. And therefore, I did a lot over the last 2 years just to help people to overcome this fear, which was stimulated so much by the one-sided reports in the mainstream media. There was not every day an encouragement for resiliency, but there was every day making fear. And this has, of course, results in people. And therefore it is really something where we can wake up and realize and can question and can ask ourselves, is this really so? Then we have another level of risk, and that is what I named so far several times, that is the immune system. Our immunity is depending on many, many factors. It is depending on healthy nutrition. It is depending on quite balanced environmental circumstances, but it is also depending on our whole lifestyle, on our, on the way we enjoy life or we are disappointed about life. We know since the 70s of the last century, where all these beautiful interconnections were found out on the research field of psychoneuroimmunology, how much positive emotions can stimulate the immune system in a positive way. We learned how negative emotions can weaken the immune system. We learned that movement, regular, happy walks, so to say, in the environment, also in the city, that we just go out and then we look around and that we go open-minded for half an hour through the city or through the countryside, that this is stimulating the whole immune capacity. Many, many remedies, particularly for circulation and heart attack problems, heart rhythm disorders, can be healed, can be prevented just by walking every day between 30 and 50 minutes. So the immune system is an open learning system and can be positively stimulated from many sides. But what gives a certain ground stability, that is a good structure in our day and night life. Good rhythms, because rhythms are the carriers of life. There is no life's function which is not based on a rhythm. We know the inner clock, the 24-hour rhythm. We know other beautiful healing rhythms of 7-day rhythm, monthly rhythm, even the year rhythm has a lot to do, the annual rhythms, with stabilization of our health state. There's a huge field of biorhythmology and rhythm research, which is eye-opening, how life needs the care for rhythms in order to stabilize. Therefore, it is, if you live like many physicians, for example, have to live, or other people who do night service somewhere or are night workers out of whatever reasons, it is so important that they find an inner rhythm to support the outer rhythms given, or not rhythms, given by the professional life. And that is that we take moments of reflection, for example, in the morning when we wake up, then somewhere in the midst of the day, and then in the evening, last moments before we go to sleep, when we really come to ourselves, that we do a little reflection. What is for me the most essential in my life? What is the goal of my development? Why am I here? That we use a little moment of reflection. What is the most essential for me? What is the essence of my own being, and to whom and to what this essence is belonging and is connected? And of course, a spiritual dimension can then be a resource of a deep, deep inner peace and inner strength. But this coming to ourselves rhythmically, and even if we find only a big question mark because I do not know where I'm supposed to become and so on, even if we feel we are a big riddle for our own, then to look at this and to enflame the hope. When my question is serious enough, I will find the answer, because only I myself can tell me who am I. Another person cannot do. I must find the path for the truth for my own being by my own, because it's only me who really knows me. I can learn from others how they see me. I can learn a lot about myself. But finally, all these informations are coming together within me, and I need to find out, who am I? You know, when we compare humans with animals and plants, then we see immediately there is one big difference. Plants and animals are beautifully perfect. They have no deficits in their development. They have no questions. How can I become perfect? Because nature is making them perfect. And the big human riddle is why nature is not making us perfect. When people started to think in Greek philosophy, the first famous self-thinkers founded, so to say, the philosophical orientation of humanity, like Plato, like Aristotle, they found already this term of the humans who have deficits, the deficitarian human being. And what we talk about in our summit hour now is simply this question: why is this so? Because when I'm not resilient by nature, when I cannot become a perfect human being by nature, then maybe it is the meaning of the human development that I have to do this by my own, out of my own initiative. Rudolf Steiner, the founder of anthroposophy, wrote a remarkable book. One of his earliest books was purely philosophical, Philosophy of Freedom. And in this book, he says, nature is making out of us a natural being. The society is forming out of us a well-adapted being, following rules and regulations and requirements. I say this now in my own words. He made it very short, following rules, he says. A free human being. Humans can only make themselves out of themselves. It is a free decision. If we don't do, it will not happen. And therefore we can weaken us and we can strengthen us. It all depends on our free will. how we use it, that we find it, that we trust in it. It's all about a free decision. And so what I want to say is, through healthy lifestyle factors and through inner understanding that life is based on rhythms, I can give me a structure in my life from the outer and the inner, which helps me to strengthen my life's regeneration and immune capacities, my life forces. But then we have also our emotional level, our inner landscape, our consciousness level. You know, life is unconscious, but soul is conscious. We have a conscious life, which is outwardly not visible, which is an inner experience. We do not live only an outer life. We live also our own personal inner life, and each one lives in his soul alone. And it depends whom I let in this inner space, how lonely I am. I'm even the one who is deciding, what do I embrace, what do I let in, and from what I go into distance. And as I said already, it depends enormously how healthy we feel, how we feel connected, how we are in resonance with people and circumstances in our environment. But how to gain negative feelings in times of fears and trouble. This is again this big call. What about life? You know, what is the meaning of life on earth when we live in destructive circumstances? Of course, this question comes. Why do I have to tolerate all this? Why am I in this situation? How often we go through times of despair and we think there is no light at the end of the tunnel. Yeah, our inner life is in full trouble. And then it helps that we use the tools of our inner life, and that is thinking, feeling, and willing. And that we realize there is a core in this soul, and that is my I, which can handle, which can work with these inner soul forces, with thinking, feeling, and willing. And that is so helpful, because then we can, for example, start such a reflection. Why do I come out of an invisible world, then enter into this material, visible world in a body with senses, so that I can find orientation for myself in this outer world, but also with thoughts, feelings, and will intention, that I can build up my inner orientation in this world, and that I experience myself in the outer and the inner. Why do I do this when at the end of my life I will leave into the invisibility again? And when you think about this, then you realize only in a material body with clear borders, you can experience your loneliness, your identity, your individuality. to be incorporated, to be incarnated, to be embodied in a physical body. That is the condition to develop I am consciousness. Because in the moment when you go in your mind out of the world of the senses, because you close your senses and you start to reflect inwardly, you immediately experience in my thoughts, in my feelings, I am connected. I am not isolated. What gives me the possibility for distance, for isolation, is that I have this clear thought, I'm different from you, which is learned in the physical world. So what I want to say, people think the character is formed by environment and by genetic, hereditary substance, by our genes. And that's about 50-50. But that is not the whole truth. When you take one-egg twins, they share the same environment, they share the same hereditary substance, but their destinies are different. They marry different people. Very often they live in different professions, in different parts of the world. They individualize through their destiny in the physical world. They become their own due to their experiences in their own body. So the meaning of incarnation is that we become human beings, self-aware, self-guided, that we learn this. It is not given to us by nature, but we are invited by nature to learn this. Nature gives us the possibility. And when we look upon this fact from a spiritual point of view, then we come out of a spiritual world where we are wonderfully connected into this earthly world to learn about ourselves and to develop the human dignity in the meaning of freedom and love, and finding the truth of our own being. And the more we learn about this, the more conscious, self-conscious we enter after death in the spiritual world again. Incarnation after incarnation, we improve our humanity, this important step of finding ourselves. And in the Christian religion, this is said very clearly. They speak there, for example, in the Apocalypse, in the Gospel of St. John, about the second birth and the second death. And that is so important to understand this, because the first birth, of course, is the physical one. Grace to our mother's carrying will, we are all born physically. But then the process comes that we become to ourselves this riddle, who am I? And why am I here? And so on. And the result of these questions, the result of this inner search is that we find a perspective for us. And we say, what is meaningful for me, I will try, for example, in this lifetime, to become a human being a bit more in that direction I really want to become, that we feel our incompleteness and that we say, I use now my lifetime in order to make myself more complete, that I develop in a direction I want to achieve. And when I was in this situation to form, so to say, the picture of my becoming, what I want to improve during my lifetime, for what this developmental engagement is given to me, then I realized I feel the most human when I experience among people honesty. I feel the most human when I experience between people loving interest for one another. And I feel the most human when I experience respect for my and others' autonomy. That I do not cross borders, that I do not misuse power, that I respect autonomy, freedom. So I realized my thinking, my observation, they are looking for truth. My feeling have the longing to learn about love, integration, understanding through interest, trust. And my will, I am striving for autonomy. And then the human life becomes worthy for humans. It becomes human. It gets the character of more humanity, even if I can only reach small steps in this direction. But it matters. So that is how I understand the second birth, that we look for immaterial, purely spiritual values because we realize we are invisible spiritual beings, and on earth to become conscious about this fact and to learn to make the decision what sort of spiritual being I want to become. Do I want to humanize? Do I want to dehumanize in this or that direction? It is given in each person's free decision. And with this second birth, you form an immaterial core. And this is the inexhaustible source for mental resilience, that you know who you want to become, and that you stand mentally on your own feet. This gives you stability in all moments and ups and downs of life, so to say. And then, so in the gospel, it is said, you will not die the second death. What is the second death? That you lose after death consciousness, self-consciousness, because you have not formed an eternal, value-based self-consciousness. When your consciousness is only full of material reflections, of pictures from the outer world, and then the outer world is passing away with your body and with your senses, you cannot carry them over the threshold of death. And then you sleep. And Rudolf Steiner says this is one of the most important reasons for this enormous increase of population that we have since centuries now, an increasing amount of materialistic thinking, and people sleep in after death And the result is that they want as soon as possible to come back, because only on earth they can continue their conscious development and they can find maybe other solutions so that they enter into the threshold of death with a transformed consciousness or worldview. So these are spiritual perspectives we can also take into account, and then we will stand much more conscious and meaningful in our relationship life. Then every human relationship will be for us a task to help the other and to help us to humanize. When I worked in my pediatric practice, once a mother came into my consultation and she just wanted to talk about her family situation. She had 5 children and an overworked husband and was extremely stressed. And she did also work herself a little bit professionally. She was pharmacist. And at the end, she said, yes, it's really so. I know what I must do at home, that everything goes almost smoothly in my big family. But when I lose a bit of my self-control, I have immediately problems. So she realized how powerful her influence is on peace at home. And how now to work with yourself when you are this mother, that you feel not as a victim, but that you feel as the one who can give this for some years to your family environment. These are inner decisions, and then you step out of the victim role in your destiny when you see what you can learn, what you can give others. Then it becomes your own enterprise, so to say. Then it's what you want. So on the soul level, we have big chances to weaken and to strengthen us mentally, but also others, because every feeling we have is a relationship to something. And to care for a good quality of our relationships is a very important resiliency factor. I'm an admirer of Aaron Antonovsky's salutogenesis concept. He did research and wanted to find out what keeps people healthy. And he did this research in Israel, and among those people he had to examine in regard their health state, it was women beyond their 60s. He found survivors of the Holocaust, quite a number. And among those from whom he would thought, he was a medical sociologist, about those he thought they would be broken in body and soul because of these total inhuman circumstances in the Holocaust. He realized that quite a significant number of these survivors were more healthy than the average of the population he did research with. They were the healthiest even he found in Israel, some of them. And that brought him to question, how can I understand this phenomena? And so more than 200 questions he made in his questionnaire, and he gave this to all these people to fill it out. And at the end, he found it is mainly 3 resiliency factors which made these people survive, and not only survive, but survive healthily, survive that they could develop afterwards an enormous strength. 2 days ago, an Holocaust survivor in Germany, living in Berlin, died with 99 years. And still last year, she talked with students in school about her story and encouraged them not to forget and to avoid such tendencies. She was so engaged to help others not to repeat. You know, why is the evil in the world? Not that we repeat it, but that we wake up for the good. That is why the evil is in the world, that we wake up for the good. And the Holocaust survivors show this to us so intensely. Yeah, Antonovsky found out that 3 factors, 3 basic feelings make the difference between a healthy or an unhealthy soul. And that this is the precondition, a healthy soul for a healthy body, for a good health state. If people feel not good, then sooner or later they become ill, when this bad feeling becomes chronic. So he found out when people feel, oh, I understand this, then they feel good. And therefore, the first principle he named the principle or the sense of coherence. It was his term, understandability. When I understand, then I am mentally coherent with something in my environment. Then I am mentally in resonance. But it's not enough that I understand something. I must also feel how beautiful this is that I understand. This gratitude that I'm allowed to understand, that I look through, because through understanding we become part of something. We have it in us and we feel part of it in a healthy way. And this feeling of understandability was the one he found. And then the second, meaningfulness. You know, when you only understand something, this is one. Even if you feel it is beautiful. But, for example, if you cannot find the meaning of the pandemic, the meaning of a war, when you understand why it happens, but you cannot find the meaning, then you do not feel good. But when you find aspects of a possible meaning, for example, in this direction, that the evil can happen and has reasons, but not in order to repeat, but in order to understand and to wake up for the good, then you can make meaning out of even very negative happenings. And most of these Holocaust survivors had deep spiritual experiences, divine enlightenments in these horrible crisis moments. They were not alone. They felt, I am here in a situation and I have to draw out of this the meaning. And this gives me a powerful resilience possibility. So to find the meaning of life, of difficult destinies, difficult circumstances, it's a painful pathway, but a very powerful one. And to live with aspects of meaning, this gives you a good feeling for your own existence. You feel then good, even in difficult situations. And then he found out a third feeling, a third sense of coherence. And that was what he named manageability. When I feel I can handle something, when I feel I can manage something, then I feel good. So it's again an awakening process, a feeling process for our three soul capacities: thinking, feeling, and will. But from the aspect of your active I can connect with my thinking towards truth, towards understanding. I can connect with my feeling towards making sense out of all my relationships and experiences. And I can connect with my willpowers to use this will so that my activities can be constructive for my environment and for myself. So that is Antonovsky's teaching, which goes in the same direction with all what I tried to say so far. But his salutogenic concept with this threefold sense of coherence is really a beautiful eye-opener for taking serious one's own inner journey. But beyond this soul level, this inner soul space experience as our mental working place, we have this riddle of our own I am, of the core of our being. And that is really, let me put it so, the most powerful resource of resiliency and inner stability when we come to understand this. And I will try just to give some little directions for your reflection. And I'm sure that it goes together with what many of you are trying and doing and looking for. One is that we come to an insight which is surprising. There is no object in the world which we have not words everyone can use. For example, my cup of coffee. Everyone can say that is Michaela's cup of coffee. There's only one word, one concept, everyone can only use for himself. And that is this mysterious word, I. For everyone else except me, I am you. Only for me, I am I. So I realize I am me. What do I do with this me, this I am capacity? And this question opens up an inner spiritual dimension where we have one doorway we can immediately find, and that is the doorway of our conscience. There is a doorway to the world of beings, spiritual beings, like my I am is a purely spiritual being. In my conscience, I can connect with higher beings because through my conscience, I can receive messages which are not coming from other people. I can have intuitions. I can have inspirations. For example, this prayer of St. Francis is a typical conscious inspiration. He received in his eye this intuition. I am a being which can change, which has freedom, which can bring change in every problem which can occur. Where is pain? I can bring healing. Where is hatred? I can bring love through understanding, for example, through forgiveness. You know, you discover your own I am being by inner listening. What is the inspiration? Where is the inspirator of my I am? Of course, we experience loneliness. This is important in order to develop self-consciousness. To become a free being, I need to tolerate loneliness. That is the condition. If I choose dependency, I cannot become an individual. That is very clear. But when I have accepted this, and when I feel I am standing on my own feet, then I realize that is not all, because I can connect and I can reconnect. I remember well when I lost, for example, the belief of my childhood in God, in angels, in the spiritual world. But I could find it again. We can, the beautiful word religion or spiritual orientation shows this. I can look for this. I can find it again. And I realize with what I connect myself, this becomes part of myself. We experience this most powerful among humans through real love. When we love someone and this person loves us back, then we have the experience of trust, of being at home in the soul of another person, and the other person is living in us. We experience an enormous increase of strength, because when two beings are loving one another, are carrying one another, are being with one another without any conditions, from free person to free person, unconditional love, this is an enormous multiplication. You are not 1 + 1, you are multiplied in your inner strength. Therefore, spiritual community building, that free people connect, share the same goals, share this unconditional interest for one another, share the same belief, the same trust in life, trust in development, trust in the well-being of this whole evolution, then our I am grows, because our I am receives its meaning and its inner strength from everything we connect with. The more isolated and not connected we are, the more poor and weak this I is feeling itself. And the more we learn to understand, to love the world, and to work in the world, and to be connected, the more active and inner, courageous and strong our I can develop and can experience itself. Therefore, we have in the religious and esoteric literature different words for the I. We say there is a everyday I, or we say lower self. But then there is a higher self. And then there is a true self. Yeah? 3 aspects of our own identity. The lower self is a gift of development. Children start one day to say, I am, then they know by thinking, I am an I. Then 9th, 10th year, they feel, that is pre-puberty, they feel for the first time what it means to be a self, to be an I am. They feel loneliness. They feel for the first time this pain. No one loves me. What do I do when my mother will die? Maybe I'm not the child of my parents. No, all these adoption fantasies, this comes up because we feel what it means, I am. And then with 15, 16, we experience, I'm responsible for the I am. I must take the decisions. I must become adult. And that is the beginning of opening up conscience to listen. What do I really want? What I can stand for? To become more and more independent from outer advice and support. And when I take it, I prove it in front of my mind, of my conscience, if I follow or not. So this is a gift of development, that we experience these 3 main stages of the development of our lower self. Lower it is because it is a gift of my body, of my material existence, that I gain this threefold I am awareness. But then comes this moment in which we go through this painful experience of desperation and second birth, that we form our higher identity, from which we know we don't have it yet, but we want to give birth higher qualities like truth, like unconditional love, like autonomy. These higher qualities I can give birth through my identification with these ideals. And then we connect with spiritual forces. We all know these words, or many of us from Buddhism, from Christianism, that these beautiful beings say what they say about truth. Christ says, for example, about truth, I am the truth. I am with you when you love one another. And truth will make you free. When you connect with this I am, then you feel a total other strength in your small I am when you connect with this huge world-oriented I am carrying the truth of the world in his mind. So the higher self is when we give birth to our becoming being. But when we find the true self, then this is this connection with the Lord himself, when we can say, not me, but the Lord within me, not me, but Christ within me. Or how is it said in other religions, when I am on the Buddha path? It is this Buddha search within me, this completeness of humanity. It is the spirit of humanity which is revealing in different spiritual orientations, but it is always this same spirit of humanity which helps us as our true self to become true human beings. And this orientation is the most powerful resiliency factor we can achieve. And in pandemic and war times, in which so much fears and destructiveness comes towards us, I really feel it is so important that we meet, that we talk about what is really essential in life and how can we draw out of these problematic circumstances the very best for our own development and for the development in our environment, for our relatives and the people we live with. Yeah, dear participants, I leave it here and I give back the word to the moderator, and I hope we will have a clarifying question and answer session.
Thank you, Dr. Michaela, for my personal experience after listening to all your sharing is a really remarkable experience. And also we thought of this resilience as being something so superficial. You know, we need to build 10 steps to achieve resilience, but what or 20 steps, maybe, you know, people will perceive it as something that you need to build, you need to have it, like something people add into it. But there's so much, that's just tip of the iceberg. You have really brought up so many essence of resilience coming from the fundamentals. And I really thank you. And I really feel that the talk somehow addressed to me, you know, and I really thank you so much. We have some questions from the floors. So I would like to address the question to Dr. Michaela. The first question is, so sorry, give me a minute. Okay, the first question, I think earlier on, Dr. Michaela has shared about the immune system and how we actually, immune system and how it actually is an open learning system. Yeah, so there's someone that asked, Dr. Michaela, does it mean that when we have stronger mental resilience, it will boost our immune system?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but on the other hand, there is one important thing, you know, when you remember the first 2 people who died in March 2020 in Malaysia. One was, I looked it up in the internet again, one was 34 years old and the other was 60 years old. And both deaths are not typical by age. I do not know the preconditions, the personal circumstances. I know only the age. And this is total untypical. We have most of those who died from COVID are beyond their 70s, or they are coming out of immune deficient life circumstances. But nevertheless, there are exceptions. And that is important to realize in the framework of all our conversation, because there is one component which we have not yet considered, and that is that every person has an individual destiny, and part of this destiny is how long lifetime on earth is. We can die with 34 by a car accident. We can die with 34 by any infection which becomes fulminant out of whatever reasons. I can die with 34 by a heart attack. You know, this I cannot prevent by nothing. And from this we can learn, on the one hand, we do what we can to support the flame of life we have so that the life quality is best possible. But we cannot make a decision about the length of our lifetime. But in our freedom is the decision about the quality of our lifetime, about the how. And that is also an aspect we have to take into consideration. Therefore, trust in life, trust in destiny is part of this resilience factors we spoke about. And it depends, of course, how we are connected with the spiritual world, with how open the door of our conscience is, so to say. that this trust is heavenly based. Yeah, that there is a higher wisdom carrying me as long as I am not yet privileged to know more. You know, most of us could not live in a healthy way when they would know when they would die. Yeah, it is a huge gift that we don't know about, that there is a higher wisdom knowing this, and this is part of this destiny learning and the destiny wisdom.
Really touching, sharing from Dr. Michaela about, how we can see this situation as building faith, building trust. And I think we went completely the wrong direction. We went to fear, we went into worry, that really clears up a lot of our, give us a lot of new perception, new view about how we should deal with the pandemic more resiliently. And we also have another question coming from the boss. And yeah, this question is more about the community, maybe. Yeah. So is this pandemic also another form of collective trauma for all human races? Mm-hmm. And what we can do to help ourselves and our community to face and transform it?
Yeah, it is a real traumatic experience. And the traumatic experience was as deep as fear and shock and all the follow-ups out of these negative emotions did then grow. And we have a collective global trauma, which is in some places more destructive than in others, but there is almost no individual totally untouched by it. And therefore it is a call to reflect what can heal and balance traumatic experience. And from good trauma therapists, we know without a spiritual orientation, trauma cannot be healed or balanced. Why is this so? Because if you meet deepest fear of life and destructive forces, that you lose your job, that you are isolated and cannot meet your friends, when you really meet destructive influences which are robbing you your freedom to a certain extent, then you need these sources I tried to speak about of mental guidance, that you ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Why am I so fearful? That you wake up, that you have now in this trauma an encounter with destructive powers of our human existence, which can only be balanced when you put aside to these destructive powers good experiences, good impressions, good activities. Because from the neurological point of view, a trauma makes, of course, an imprint in our brain and in the relationship between your brain and your body. The trauma is sitting in your body as well, not only in your brain. It is a full body experience. And you can only compensate, because no one can erase the traumatic experience, because it has made its imprint. And therefore, trauma therapy means now to make other full body experiences be part of your full body experience, so that the good imprints can balance the negative imprints. Therefore, we do with children artistic plays, joyful experiences in nature, and with music, and with modeling, with painting, with dancing. You know, we do give the children the possibility to experience peaceful, harmonious, enjoyable, full body experiences. And then the traumatic experiences can be forgotten, can be balanced, and lose their power. And what is the arts and beautiful interplays and social interactions for children that can be the same for adults, but it can be topped by mental reflections of the type we tried it now in our session. Yeah, because there you also bring total other mental imprints in your full body. And when you take time for prayer, for inner peace exercises, you stimulate your brain-body interaction in a positive way. And then you can balance out the traumatic experience. And for me, that is the call. Many people came on their spiritual pathways through the pandemic, which would not have done this in our times without that. Yeah, so that is just how we try as humans to wake up for the good, or to transform the negative into positive activities.
I'm also curious because when you talk about the imprint, the mental imprint we have from our body, to mental imprint, we can live a full body experience. You know, trauma is like a full body experience you mentioned, but most of us will not be able to perceive it that way. Maybe Dr. Michaela, would you like to share some of the signs and symptoms we have in the body, maybe to let more people aware of the traumatic imprint that it may leave in the body?
Can you just repeat what is really what I shall share? I didn't fully get. Shall I share the physiological pathways, how a traumatic experience comes about, or?
Yeah, but most of us, I find it very interesting because most of us will feel that the trauma only happens in the brain, in the mental itself. But you were mentioning and sharing about how trauma can actually leave imprint in the body itself.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's like a full body experience of trauma. And in this pandemic, I believe that a lot of people are having, you know, this, it's like this question itself mentioned is a collective trauma. So maybe Dr. Michaela, can you share some of the symptoms that, or some of the signs we have in our body to actually clarify that, you know, maybe to the extent that, you know, we are affected by trauma, and it actually leaves certain symptoms in the body, maybe, you know, some certain kind of pain, you know, certain kind of experience in the body that could be different if we don't have this collective trauma.
Yeah, that is a very interesting field of self-experience. You know, what is the part in the brain where we bring together memory, emotions, and sense experience, traumatic experience or good experiences from the outer world. That is the so-called hippocampus region. And this region is developing between 7 and 14, 15 years. That is the time in which we develop empathy, feeling, also emotional intelligence. You know, when all this realm of emotional experience is developing. And that is also the time when you remember back in the age between 7 and 14, in which children are most powerfully reacting psychosomatically. When they have a shock, then it can be that they do urinate, not in the toilet, but just in the moment where they are. Or other, getting pale, getting red. You can see almost every feeling as a full body experience. You know, while the part in the brain is developing and learning, you see it is a full body interaction permanently. Feeling is bringing in resonance the body with the environment. And the brain, we have a beautiful book by a neurologist and psychiatrist, Thomas Fuchs, which is internationally was praised on congresses as a new paradigm in brain research. He wrote a book with this title, The Brain is a Relationship Organ. Yeah, the brain formation is not coming out of its own. The brain is formed along the experiences we have. And because we have a nerve system throughout our body, each cell in its life state is perceived by the brain. So the brain is getting everything which takes place in the body, and it has to react to everything in the environment. And the result of this double reaction is the brain formation. Yeah, we need to have a more realistic concept what the brain is. And then we understand why this is a full body experience when we have a trauma. Because when, for example, I had a very problematic, traumatic experience in my early childhood. It was due to a narcose in the frame of an operation I had to undergo before my self-consciousness woke up. Yeah. So I am a bit a post-traumatic person, therefore I know it very well from my own experience. I had throughout my childhood permanently, and until I started to work on it consciously, I had always fear to die. I had fear to die. And this was a full body experience because this first trauma was taken like this. That means you get cold, you have fear, you are shrinking, yeah, you get fearful feelings, you are re-traumatized when you feel endangered. Therefore, I learned very late to swim because if someone put me on the water, I had fear to drink, you know, to lose my precious life. And this is, of course, not nice, but on the other hand, grace to this traumatic experience, I found so early my path into spirituality. Without this, I would not have had this need to look what gives me inner calm, how can I overcome my fearfulness, what gives me back trust in destiny. You know, all what I spoke about, I had to learn this myself. And therefore, I find it meaningful to have a traumatic experience as a help of destiny, because without this help, we would not look so intensely after the good. Maybe we would enjoy and just live a happy life without learning about all this, because we think there is no need. And there are other people, for example, my sisters, I have 4 sisters, no one of them was fearful. Yeah, they have other destinies, other pathways, other circumstances. And that is so beautiful, but of course also challenging.
Thank you, Dr. Michaela, for such a hopeful picture you paint for trauma. And I have these questions. I think it's good to follow up with these questions. How do I realize that I am consciousness in the fullest sense? Now I can only feel I am sadness, I am fear, etc.
Yeah. If you are in the situation that you feel what you now share, almost insecurity, rather negative feelings, and you feel the absence of these other dimensions which can give inner trust, then I think you need to start your journey. You need to sit down and to write down what you want to achieve. It's interesting, you know, we are in difficult situations, but we know it could be different, although I cannot reach it. You know, and I would say this is the precondition how to prepare for the second birth, that you write down what goals you see in others, or you have met in books, or you just know that there are qualities you don't have. Then write them down and ask yourself, why do I want to have that? What do I know about it? Why do I think I cannot reach? First, start to reflect by your own. Become your own teacher. Look a bit for self-knowledge. Why is this so? And then try to think back, was there any time in your life where you were not fearful, where you had enjoyable experiences, and realize the one who experienced these joyful moments is as well me. And then you become a bit more in distance to your actual situation when you compare your actual depressed situation with earlier lightful situations. And then you realize, I am not the person who is now down. I am not the person who was here in the light. I am a person who goes through experiences in order to learn about who am I. And when you have realized this, that there is someone, you know, let me put it so, that you are not your experience, but that you have a certain experience. that you go through experiences, then you find the starting point for your journey, because then you have the first sense that you are a being going through experiences, but being more than your experiences, being a potential, an invisible, powerful, spiritual potential. And then when you need advice, then I checked a lot of spiritual pathways and religions, of course, and I ended up with a combination of the Gospels, primarily the Gospel of St. John, and the anthroposophic book, How to Reach Knowledge of Higher Worlds by Rudolf Steiner. Because in both of these books, I found these three core values fundamental: freedom, the student is not depending on the teacher, not the old guru dependency, total free. The teacher is just a conversation partner, but not a director. I have to make the choice myself, and reflecting the advice and making the decision by my own. And the same attitude I find in the Gospel of St. John, where it is said, truth will make you free, but the truth you have found by your own. So this free decision-making gives you the experience that you are an eternal decision-making being, connected with values which are invisible, which are purely mental. No one can see love under the microscope or truth. It's just aspects you get through your senses, but the concept, the truth within, you must find on mental inner pathways. For this you have thinking, feeling, willing, and this is not visible under the microscope.
Thank you, Dr. Michaela. We have another 2 minutes, and I want to let Dr. Michaela decide whether to take in one more questions, or do you want to end your sessions?
This is your decision, dear moderator. I am totally in your service.
Okay, thank you. Then I think that I have maybe we have a bit of time to answer one more question, which is quite important, I think. How to help our younger generation to find the meaning in life and building healthier soul for the younger generations?
Yeah, for this, I wrote a book, Education for the Future. And because I have only a minute left, you can really find a lot about this in this book. For every age, how I can encourage healthy development between 1 and 21. But what I can say in 1 minute, the most important thing for the younger generation is that they experience that you as adults have a clear standing and orientation in life, and that you are with your child with all advice you have when they need it, but that the children are experiencing you respect their autonomy, you are honest with them, you love them unconditionally, and you set age-appropriate borders because they are not yet adult. But the main thing is an absolutely safe and loving relationship. And when children and youngsters are experiencing this, at least from one adult, not only in early childhood where bonding is famous, but also later. It can be one teacher, it can be parent. It must be an adult from whom the child is experiencing what it means to become a true human being, human values, human radiations, human qualities, because then they can build up under this protection their own inner strength. But they need, in the time of becoming, a sort of protective power, and that is our human interest and love in their development, because they are our future. And when we accompany them with expectation without condition, with a loving expectation, I'm curious how you will make it, and I am with you with all my strength. That is the most important thing.
Thank you for being such a supportive spirit to us, during this pandemic. We are very blessed to learn from Dr. Michaela during this very difficult hardship. For me, learning about the importance of taking our inner journey seriously gives strength to us, as we are navigating through this stormy pandemic wave. And this word caught my, really touched me to become human being, to be self-aware, to be self-guided. We are truly invited by the nature to actually learn this. And it really touched our team also very deeply. And Dr. Michaela, thank you for giving us hope in what it seems to be hopeless situations. And I'm truly grateful for your sharing today. And I'm going to share a little bit about Dr. Michaela's mission in Malaysia through IPMT, the International Postgraduate Medical Training Program, was initiated in 2001 by Dr. Michaela. IPMT is offered as a series of international annual course weeks, which for a licensed doctor can lead to a certification as a doctor of anthroposophy of medicine after 5 years. So since then, Dr. Michaela has brought IPMT over 10 countries around the world, including Malaysia since 2013, on invitation by Dr. Joanne Ont, who attended IPMT Taiwan in 2010. Malaysian are indeed a very blessed nation. IPMT Malaysia not only cater for medical profession, but also community from all walks of life, like teachers, farmers, parents, like many of us, who have interest in healthy human development and community well-being. All are welcome to participate, so it's a very wide range of choices, including medicine, nursing, pharmacy, child development, curative education, biodynamic agriculture, nutrition, eurythmy, art therapy, as well as self and community leadership. So due to COVID situations, IPMT Malaysia has stopped for past 2 years in order to keep the connection alive. The Malaysia volunteer team has organized the online Anthroposophic Conference Malaysia in November 2021, last year. Dr. Michaela was invited as a key speaker, and it was attended by close to 2,000 participants from 16 countries. So we are, you can see the Facebook page and some of the information to go to the website to check out more information. And with that, thank you, dear participants of the webinar and FB viewers, for allocating your time being with us today and appreciating your gesture of support. On behalf of organizing committee here, I would like to invite our audience to leave a few words of thoughts under the Facebook live stream, under the comment sections. You may click the link from the chat box at the bottom of your Zoom control panel now. And not forgetting those who watch us live, please join us in the comment section. Your view, your thoughts could be an inspiration for us. And before we end today, allow me to share our next coming talk. Tonight, there'll be another talk by a Taiwan speaker. And tomorrow morning, we have Bante Kumara sharing with us cultivating awareness topics. So welcome to join. And lastly, we would like to promote a little about Uta Hospital, a non-profit hospital that will be self-sustained. So your valued support and generous contribution to this hospital project will be greatly beneficial to the medical and health science students. To support Uta Hospital project, kindly click in the link below www.uta.edu.my/UEF for donations. Thank you, and I hope to see you in our next talk. Bye everyone, and have a good day, and welcome again, and have an awesome evening.
Thank you, Dr. Michaela.